Well, welcome to the Aviation Insurance Podcast. I'm your host, Tim Bonnell, and I'm always excited to bring to our audience leaders in the aviation insurance industry. And today, I've got a fantastic guest who is just that. Eric Donofrio from AXA XL has been a leader with multiple insurance companies for many years and is even now elevated to the position of Chief Underwriting Officer, Specialties America at AXA XL. And so today, I'm very excited to bring to you our guest, Eric Donofrio. Eric, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, good morning, Tim. It's great to see you, and thank you for having me.
You bet. So we've been doing this for a couple decades, at least, more than that. And so just give us a high-level overview of your journey from getting into the aviation insurance business until today.
Sure. Like a lot of people, in our business, I came at this through aviation. I grew up in an aviation family, essentially 3 generations of aviation. My grandmother was the secretary to the tower, the traffic control tower manager at LaGuardia Airport. So when my father was a young kid, she used to take him to work, and he grew up around air traffic controllers and developed a love of aviation. Ended up that he had his pilot's license. He flew at a small airport that doesn't exist anymore, right across the bay from LaGuardia Airport, called Flushing Airport. And he was actually taking the bus to his flying lessons and had his pilot's license before he was driving. And this was back in the era of the Vietnam War. The draft was going on, and I think he had a fairly low draft number and decided to raise his hand and make his own choice. So joined the Air Force, became a pilot in the Air Force. And so that's really what I grew up with over the years. So I was always around aviation growing up. I developed a love for it at a very early age. Didn't go to college for it. I actually went to a small liberal arts school in the Northeast, studied government international relations and had a minor in economics, and did all of my flying really on the side from my formal schooling. And, at the end of my schooling, I decided that I wanted to do something that really combined business and aviation. And we had a family connection that had worked in the business for years and years at USAIG, actually. So ended up getting my start in this business as a general aviation underwriter back in the 90s at USAIG. Did that for a few years. Decided to try my hand at the broking side of the business. So went over to the broking side for about 7 years at 2 of the larger brokers. At that time was introduced to the products liability world, and that was really interesting. I mean, I loved the GA world, but it was neat to see that new kind of that new area, and especially on the larger accounts, because that was my introduction to the London market. Doing the GA underwriting, I was typically doing 100% placements and that sort of thing. So I was introduced to London, got to start doing trips over there with clients, and really fell in love with the kind of that global aspect and global nature of the insurance market, which maybe played back into my international relations thing. But I've always been interested in other cultures and the interaction between different countries. So back in 2006, after having broke for a while, opportunity came up with XL, and came back to the underwriting side of the business. Been at XL now for 19 years. It's been a great journey. And for the majority of that, it was spent on the aviation underwriting side of the business. And just in the last, just shy of a year now, I've gotten some new responsibilities in the specialty world. I used to think aviation was somewhat exotic, but I've been exposed to some new lines that are very interesting, and I've really been learning a lot. So that's been fun. And our world's specialty includes aerospace, marine, political risk and credit, commercial surety, structured risk solutions, and our terrorism book of business. So it's kind of a broad, diverse world, and it's been fun to really be back in kind of that hardcore learning world that I'm in now, just learning about these new businesses. And it's been really enjoyable.
Yeah, it sounds like you took a stressful line and just added to it to a certain extent, but definitely sounds exciting, and we're glad that we still have your expertise on the aviation side. And so one of my favorite questions I love to ask leaders at your level is just, what are you most excited about today in the aviation or aerospace insurance market?
Yeah, I think technology, I think is really exciting, and obviously we all see this, and I think technology, you can bucket into a bunch of different categories, whether it's new technology around airframes, engines. Um, the one that I think has had a particular effect on the safety of our business has been avionics, and when you look back at the evolution of avionics, both in the airline world and in the general aviation world, I think if you look at the data over the last 30 years, you can really see that impact. And you look at the airline world, and back in the 1980s, when you look at loss frequency, it was much more intense. I mean, we were on average almost losing a mainline U.S. airliner a year in the 80s. In the 1990s, it dropped down to maybe once every 2 years, 3 years. So it really started to slow, and then we entered the 2000s, and things really really slowed down. I think is a similar pattern in the general aviation world to some extent, and to some extent in general aviation, we've seen a lot more advances in avionics than we have even in the airline world. So, when properly used in the general aviation world, I think that the avionics have changed the landscape and still can change the landscape even more. I think sometimes we've got a little bit of a training gap, that we've got all this capability in the general aviation world, but maybe we're not using it all, and maybe we still need to fill that void a bit on the training side. So we'll see. And it'll be interesting to see what comes in the next 10 or 20 years. I know, some of the companies out there are continuing to continue to improve the offerings that they have, from an avionics perspective. And it's neat. We've seen in the last couple of years, I mean, this is I hope we don't ever get here in full use, but we've seen the emergency autoland systems that have been released by one of the major avionics manufacturers, where if there's a pilot incapacitation, passengers can press a button and they'll land safely. For general aviation folks, obviously flying the airplane's the fun. So I don't ever want to totally be there, but it's always fantastic to have that option in scenarios where things might not go as planned.
Yeah, definitely. There's exciting opportunities and safety, which is important to everybody. Those of us in the airplane and those of us providing the insurance coverage and everyone concerned. And there definitely are a lot of exciting things today. And I agree. I think, a lot of aviation, there's a love of aviation and flying. And so I can't imagine that going away completely in any time in my lifetime. But there's AI is coming and other interesting things that we can't still fully comprehend what it will do, but definitely exciting in terms of safety, which is obviously important to us all. On the flip side, what are your biggest concerns for the aviation insurance market today, or what are the biggest challenges and obstacles it faces?
Yeah, there are two, and they're really under one broad theme, and that's inflation. And I think there's two types of inflation that we've been facing in the aviation insurance market, and we're seeing this in the broader insurance market also. I mean, first is what I'll refer to as just your run of the mill inflation, which in the aviation world affects repair costs. We've seen over the last couple of years, like we've seen in everything else in our lives, the cost of aircraft, from an acquisition perspective, and the cost of aircraft from a repair perspective really go up. And it's challenged our industry. And I don't know, as an industry, that we do a great job keeping pace with inflation. Obviously, it's a dynamic marketplace, and the factors of supply and demand when it comes to capacity play a large role in pricing. But we've kind of underperformed, I think, when it comes with keeping up with that normal or run of the mill, as I called it before, inflation. I think the other aspect of inflation, which is concerning, is this concept of social inflation. So the jury awards that we're seeing, and even the fear of jury awards drives settlement values before you even get to a jury. So I think if you look at the somewhat, well, in the airline world, there are somewhat limited data points out there. In the general aviation world, there are definitely more data points where you can look over time and see the progression of the severity of liability type claims over the years. And What's tricky is I think, juries often view these awards as kind of doling out justice if something's been done wrong. But I think maybe what society might be losing track of a bit is the fact that insurance is really a communal thing, and we're all in this together. And that when these types of awards ultimately cost society more in the long run. So I love to find a way to address the issue, but it's obviously been something that's out there for a while, and it's the moment doesn't appear to be changing anytime soon. And again, that's not just true in the aviation world, but I'm seeing it now in some of the other lines that I'm involved with.
Yeah, and so we've got this combination of factors you just hit on, right? So we've got inflation, the awards, the cost of repairing aircraft, and as we're recording this, there's a possibility of tariffs that could further increase the cost and parts availability and other things.
Yeah.
And just a fact that that's something the industry faces. But we also have adequate, if not over capacity in the market, leading to some lines of the aerospace, having competition where the costs are going up and challenging profitability, but there's new carriers trying to enter, other carriers trying to grow market share, holding rates stable, if not, bringing them down in certain areas. So obviously you can't pay higher cost with less money. What needs to be done? What's the focus or what's the attitude that the industry needs to keep in mind, to remain profitable, which has to happen during this balance of increasing inflation while having too much capacity?
Yeah, I think there's really three factors in this whole equation. There's the number of claims and the severity of claims. So claims. There's the premium side, and how we keep balance with those claims. And obviously that premium side is driven by what you just referenced. It's market capacity. Again, this is a market that's driven by supply and demand of insurance capacity. When there's excess supply in the market, obviously prices come down. We've seen the market transform over the last, I guess, probably looking at 6 or 7 years now, where the market got to a point where it really wasn't able to pay for just attritional losses, no less, more catastrophic or mid-level losses. We did a good job correcting course, but that's attracted, again, capacity back into the market as we've corrected course. I'd really like to see, what I'd love to see is a change in the claims picture. We were talking about technology before, and how that could change the picture. And I think that's the best way to drive this is if we can see a reduction in claims count through the use of technology and safety management systems. First of all, it's not only just better for our market, it's better for society. It's better for aviation, to benefit, that way versus just working on, the capacity side of it. So, obviously dealing with claims, if there were a way to get a hold of severity, as we mentioned in the social inflation conversation. Otherwise, to some extent, it's really driven by capacity. And ultimately, if the results aren't good, capacity will leave the market, which brings us back to that equilibrium again. So, it'll be interesting to see how things unfold over the next few years.
Yeah, and I know you alongside, have been doing this for decades, and so this is a cycle that always seems to happen. It repeats itself over and over. The market corrects itself. Just what you said, we reach a level where it's bringing in enough premium to adequately pay the claims and have reserves. Then more capacity comes in, and it seems like a never-ending cycle. So hopefully, learning lessons from the past to where it doesn't get to the point where, like you said, paying for attritional losses is a problem. And so,
Tim, just to build on that for a second, the market
you
cycle.
bet.
Yeah. It's interesting. I started in this business in 1996, so I'm coming up on about 30 years in the business. And it's been interesting to watch that cycle. And we've had a little bit of a strange cycle for the majority of both of our careers. Yeah, I think probably at the time when you and I started in this business, the insurance markets typically moved on a 3, maybe 4-year, 5-year cycle. Obviously, we had 9/11, which changed the calculus a bit. And then we were in this protracted, we had a sharp uptick after 9/11, and then we were in a protracted down cycle, which kind of broke that model of the 3 to 5 year cycle from probably about 2005 until
2006 to 18, yeah, somewhere in there.
to
Yeah,
17, 18.
yeah.
Um, and I feel like I wonder now, and I think that we're going to return to that more traditional, shorter term market cycle that we saw prior to 9/11. But we'll have to wait and see what ultimately happens.
No, that makes a lot of sense, and definitely, hopefully, is a better indicator because it's 3 to 4 year cycle is definitely better than 12, 13 from an
For
indicator
sure.
of health in the market, and that's what everyone wants health in the market. Because obviously they want insurance carriers to be able to pay their claims, and they want rates to be stable and not skydiving up and nose diving down back and forth all the time. So
Sure.
that would definitely be good news. And so we've talked about technology playing a role in the safety aspect, which reduces claims, helps control costs, and that helps keep premium in line. But how do you foresee some of the latest technologies like the flight data monitoring system and telematics, taking gathering a lot more data points that you can provide and that are available and will become increasingly more available down the road? How will that play from your perspective into the future of underwriting aviation insurance risks?
Yeah, it's exciting. I think it's definitely going to be part of the future. I think there's a couple steps that we have to go through here to make it of value to us. I think first of all, we need to collect data. We need to have the ability to collect data. So when you look at take general aviation, for instance, this is fairly common in the airline world. FOQA has been around for a number of years. In the general aviation world, we've got more of a mixed bag when it comes to fleet. When you look at aircraft age and the capability of avionics in those airplanes. So I think for us to really employ this in GA, we need to be able to collect a lot more data. And, that data, as you mentioned, can come from a lot of different places. If someone has newer avionics in their cockpit, perhaps that we can start getting data from there. We could get data from iPads. We had looked a few years ago at using cell phone data and Excel. Cell phones, iPads have accelerometers in them. When you look at some of the applications that pilots use these days, there's the ability to pull data from there. ADSB, obviously, with the mandate from a few years ago on ADSB data. So we're starting to see the amount of data that's potentially out there grow. So I think we probably need to make some more strides in getting that more across the fleet. Then we need to collect the data, and then we need to analyze the data. And that'll be the interesting part. How do we analyze the data going forward? How do we look for signals in that data that are predictors of future loss? And maybe artificial intelligence has a role to play in this because there's going to be a lot of data. And maybe, machine learning, which, I don't have I've done some work with some of our folks internally on machine learning. I always describe it as just maybe a step below true artificial intelligence, can help us with this. And I think there'll be some, blatantly obvious signals that maybe comes out of this data. If we observe someone that tends to scud run on every flight, is that may be an indicator that this person could face that as potential accident. But I also think there will probably be more nuanced signals in the data that may not jump out at us right away. That may be indicators of behavior that could predict future losses. I don't see this happening tomorrow. I think it's going to take some time. But you can't ever say that we'll never get there. I think we'll get there at some point.
Yeah, I agree. It's a process, and there's more and more opportunities for data, but getting it all processed and in a somewhat standard way to where it's measurable, that's a journey that will take a while. I agree completely. And speaking of, the telematics, the new eVTOL, advanced air mobility aircraft, they're taking in all kinds of, it's all computer operated. They're big on the telematics, all this data.
Really cool.
And so it's an emerging market in the aerospace industry for insurance. And as an industry, we've always stepped up to try to insure new risks from aircraft to jumbo jets to space to drones. And today, this is kind of the new thing. And so, how do you foresee any issues with insurability or just the challenges and opportunities with insuring, eVTOL, advanced air mobility vehicles as they now start to come into production and they grow in size and scope of use?
Yeah, I think it's a really exciting time. I visited some of these folks recently. I did a recent visit where we saw, and this was a electric. I think it was an octocopter design, fully autonomous. No plan for a pilot operation in this one. We saw a demo flight of the technology, and this is a very serious organization that's working on this particular model. And that some of the technology that they're developing actually can be transferred over to manned aircraft, which is interesting, going back to some of the things that we talked about before. But I'm a believer that in the right hands, that this can be done safely. And I think it will be done safely. We insure some of this already, and I know a lot of our competitors in the market insure a lot of it. So we're kind of cutting our teeth in the space. Where we haven't, at the moment, for the most part, we're ensuring the development of it and that sort of thing. We haven't seen these really go operational, but I think there's a lot of tools that we can use in the insurance business to enable this technology to begin and to be put to commercial use. And I think things like, limit management in the early days will be important. The tool of sharing of risk, quota sharing, these types of risks will be important. And I think over time, the industry will become more comfortable with it as they really demonstrate the reliability of the product. And I think we'll get there. And I don't know that we have to make any major changes to, policy forms or that sort of thing. This is an airplane, or an aircraft, in some form. Some of these are, hybrids between, rotor wing technology and airplane technology. So I don't think we'll have to change a lot there. I think there's a lot of other interesting issues around this topic, besides insurance. It's, how will we integrate them into the national airspace system? I think that will be one of the tougher challenges. I work in New York City, and I know New York City's had a contentious relationship with the helicopter community over the years. And, will the residents of New York be comfortable with, autonomous aircraft zipping all around the city? We'll have to see. So we'll see where that is. And just societal acceptance in general. I mentioned autonomous eVTOL. The first folks that get in that helicopter or aircraft, I should say, they're going to be in there without a pilot. And how will society feel about that? I think we'll get there. Who knows how far down the road it is, but it's neat. And this is aerospace moving forward, just like it always has. So it's really exciting.
Yeah, it is. And we're in an exciting time because so much innovation is happening all at once compared to, the last couple of decades. And, I think we're on the same page. It's probably going to happen, but it is a process and it'll take time. And I know that the good news is we have, forward-thinking people, leaders in our industry, such as yourself and in the insurance companies and the brokerage world, and certainly in our support organization. So it'll definitely be exciting to see, and aerospace remains exciting, and it's great that, again, to have insurers willing to step up and provide solutions to address these new and exciting technologies and risks in a way that obviously is responsible and based on the experiences learned over decades of writing new types of risks. And like you said, usually involves limit management and spreading risk. And so an exciting time. Well, was there any questions I should have asked you about our aviation insurance market and didn't, or do you just have any closing thoughts to share with our audience today?
Yeah, I do have a closing thought, and it's probably applies also to the broader insurance industry, not just aviation insurance, but I think it applies in aviation insurance also. And that's that I think our industry, insurers, brokers, I think we need to do a better job selling the value proposition that we all bring to society. When you look at, progress over time, people don't buy houses, buildings don't get built, companies don't get started, airplanes don't fly if it's not for insurance. And I
Absolutely.
think in society these days, there might be a little bit of a almost an us versus them mentality between buyers and insurers. And when you really think about what insurance is a very communal thing. And insurance companies are almost the administrators of that communal relationship that exists in insurance, right? It's the losses of the few are paid for by the premiums of the many. And we're the administrators of that. And I think we need to do a better job helping people understand the value that we bring. And I'm not quite sure how we do that. I don't know that it'll be that hard, but I think we all have to collectively think about how we do that and how we bridge that gap.
I couldn't agree more. People view insurance as a commodity when without it, business doesn't happen. All those things you said, the jobs and the things they enjoy doesn't happen. And so without insurance, there's no economy like we have today. And I think that's just a really excellent point. So, Eric, I just want to thank you so much for taking some time out of your very busy schedule to visit with me and to share with our audience from your perspective and your expertise. So just thank you for your time. And it's always great to talk to you. Thank you for being a guest here on the podcast today.
Yeah, Tim, it was great to see you. It's been a little bit of time since I last saw you. Certainly appreciate the opportunity. It's been a great conversation. So thank you for having me.
Well, it's been a real treat. That's all for this episode. Join us again next time as we continue navigating the waypoints in aviation insurance. Until then, enjoy clear skies and unlimited visibility.
Thanks for listening to the Aviation Insurance Podcast. If you found this episode of value, please share it with someone who would benefit from this information. Don't forget to subscribe in your podcast player so you don't miss any new episodes and to help our show have more impact. This episode is brought to you by Aris Insurance Solutions, your flight plan for navigating the turbulence of aviation insurance. For more information, visit arisinsurance.com. That is www.aerisinsurance.com. Disclaimer. These episodes are for educational purposes only, and due to the changing regulatory and legal nature of the business, some information may change over time. Having a well-educated and experienced aviation insurance broker on your team is an absolute requirement to success in business and for managing your aircraft and aviation business risks.